The DEIA Committee and staff at the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, with the support of the Soto Zen Buddhist Association Board, has been instrumental in envisioning and bringing to fruition the Celebrating the Voices of Women series in this event today. This is part of an ongoing effort to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in Buddhist and Zen practice. I am delighted to introduce Reverend Shojin, a dedicated resident priest at the Houston Zen Center for the last 15 years. In 2023, she received Dharma transmission, highlighting her deep commitment to Zen practice. As a skilled sewing teacher, she has inspired many and recently retired from her role as a music and band teacher in the A-Leaf Independent School District in Houston. Reverend Shojin's warmth and compassion enriches her Sangha at the Houston Zen Center in countless ways. Reverend Shojin will provide the introductory remarks. Please join me in welcoming her. Again, thank you, everyone. Reverend Shojin, please take it from here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Zena, for the introduction. It's good to see you again today. On the day of the full moon's glow, it is an honor to welcome you to Houston Zen Center, where we are gathering together to close our journey of celebrating the voices of women in Buddhism. Today's full moon Bodhisattva ceremony is a moment not only of reflection, but of profound gratitude. A gratitude that we can gather in this shared space to contemplate peace, wisdom, and compassion. I am privileged to introduce our esteemed speaker, abbot and guiding teacher of Houston Zen Center, Konjin Gaelyn Godwin Roshi. Konjin Roshi has dedicated her life to the Dharma, offering guidance with a gentle yet steadfast presence that has inspired countless practitioners. She is the first woman to serve as director of the Soto Zen Buddhism International Center North America, and her leadership at Houston Zen Center is a testament to her deep commitment to fostering inclusive and compassionate communities of practice. She is trained in monasteries in Japan and at San Francisco Zen Center in all three centers. She trained for many years at the monastery Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, but moved to Houston 21 years ago to serve the Houston Zen community, and it established its center and grew into a very significant temple here in Houston. She also helped establish our retreat center on our land about an hour from Houston, where we are restoring the prairie and renovating an intensive retreat center. Konjin Roshi loves to work on the land with the community and has strived to open the doors to all beings. As we've explored this year, women's voices in Buddhism have historically been overlooked, yet they have always been vital, courageous, wise, and transformative. Gaelyn Roshi's voice embodies this legacy. Her teachings help us encounter our inner truths while reminding us that awakening is possible in our daily lives. She brings clarity and insight to the path of Zen, showing us that enlightenment isn't somewhere distant, but right here, in this very moment. As we embark on the full moon ceremony today, Konjin Roshi will guide us into an exploration of the role of women in this world, as well as the important connections we have as Western women with our sisters in Japan and China. Her leadership and teachings have been a source of light to many, and we are deeply fortunate to hear her today. Please join me in welcoming Konjin Gaelyn Roshi.
Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much, Shojin-sama. And I can see the gallery. I have a little laptop here, so I see all of your beautiful faces, those of you who aren't here in person. So good to see you. And good to see my community here. Great to be with you. I also really especially want to thank Keegan, Anna Breckenridge, and Zena for all your work, Chris Fortin, Ben Connolly, all the organizers of the Soto Zen Buddhist Association who've done hard work to get this series going and have shepherded it for the entire year. It's a wonderful program. And I celebrate with you this season of the year, the light as well as the dark. The darkest night of the year is approaching. And over this year of celebratory events, we have listened to teachings of great brightness, as well as those that have explored the shadow side of the practice of Zen for women. Every talk in this series has been illuminating. I have learned a great deal from all the women who participated. From the first presentation by Dr. Paula Arai, who grounded the series, through the wonderful talk by Reverend Chimio Atkinson, who spoke of her own transformation over the years of her practice. She likened herself to clay, open to being molded, open to being changed. Then on to the teachings on the trauma body and the pressure women have faced over the centuries to deny their own reality. As you have heard, women have been an equal part of Buddhism and in the Soto Zen lineage since the beginning, including Buddha's followers. Buddha treated the famous fourfold Sangha of lay women, lay men, ordained women, and ordained men as equally worthy practitioners of the way. As Reverend Kutz taught, the founder of Soto Zen in Japan, Dogen Zenji, upheld this practice of treating the fourfold Sangha, lay men, lay women, ordained men, ordained women, as equal. In the fascicle Rai Hai Tokusui, he described coming back to Japan from China, where women had held high Dharma positions. He witnessed women abbots, women leaders, but when he came back to Japan, he witnessed the disrespect with which women were treated by other Buddhist schools of the time. Dogen Zenji wrote that the fact that no one in Japan is asking about this discrimination, this is a quote of the translation, he said that the fact that no one is asking about the discrimination with which women were treated in Japan and in Buddhism at the time makes you laugh so hard you will bust a gut. I found this so refreshing, a little hint of Dogen's sense of humor. Our Soto Zen school at the very beginning was very unusual in its treatment of women. Dogen Zenji and the early Soto Zen masters were open to women students. Keizan Zenji's mother was a student of Dogen Zenji's. The historical record supports this story. Both Dogen and Keizan Zenji proclaimed the equality of women, insisting on the non-dual truth of the non-duality of gender. The importance of Dogen's follower, Keizan Zenji, who is widely credited with spreading Soto Zen around Japan due to his flexibility toward local practices, his openness, is also reflected in his own steady support and recognition of women in Soto Zen. His supporters included lay women and nuns, whose name we recite in the women's lineage list that many of our centers have adopted, Mokufu Sonin. Without her, Soto Zen would not be what it is today. However, what we have noticed over the last 2,500 years as Buddhist practice has spread across the planet, and especially in the last few hundred years in Soto Zen, cultural influences have redefined the worthiness of all these categories of lay and ordained, of men and women, sometimes oppressing one or more of the different categories. In addition to the historical records I have studied, this series has allowed us to hear the actual voices of women who are speaking for themselves and for other women whose voices have been obscured and even lost. I celebrate with all of you the devoted and tenacious efforts of women in our time and over the centuries who have struggled, fought, and sometimes prevailed in their efforts to set the record straight and celebrate the teachings and practice of all women practitioners. To follow the path and go beyond categories into our true boundlessness. This is where wisdom and compassion truly flourish. My own efforts over the last few years have been to restore the recognition of Soto Zen women in early Japan, which is very important for women today. In early Soto Zen, again, Dogen Zenji and his disciples ordained women, as well as giving full Dharma transmission to women. It wasn't until the Tokugawa era in Japan, that is 400 years after the time of Dogen Zenji, that the role of women in Soto Zen was severely curtailed. As historians note, it wasn't that the temples and monasteries suddenly deprived women of full recognition in the 17th century, but rather the sudden change in the policies of the new shogunate, the new government, opened the way for some Soto Zen leaders and other Buddhist leaders to remove privileges from ordained women they had long enjoyed, such as leading their own temples and monasteries. When we tell this story in Japan, it is with the hope and intention that the current Soto Zen leadership will open their hearts and return to the original practice, rather than continue the limitations that have historically been imposed on women. This is a very important cultural moment in many countries. When I met with Aoyama Roshi, the very important Soto Zen teacher, aged 94, she answered the question from the interviewer who asked how she viewed the situation of women in Zen. She said, "I do not see gender. I do not see women or men." She is a Zen master, and she was answering beyond categories. But here in our current world, we must keep our eyes and hearts open to the situation of all people. We must see clearly and willingly act to serve and protect all people. We recently had a series of 6 events here at Houston Zen Center called The Dream of Gender in the Historical Unfolding of Buddhism, created and led by Reverend Sengetsu Tricia McFarland, who is right now training at Toshoji in Okayama, Japan. She traced the twists and turns of the identity category of gender in the historical enactment of Buddhism, from India to China to Japan to the US. Just the names of these 6 events will tell you something about the issues concerning women. Why did we want to carry on such a study? Identity categories like race, class, gender, and sexuality exert an influence even as they are ignored. Powerful mental objects like these should be investigated so we can clarify that this heart-fulfilling and socially beneficial practice is open to everyone. The first dream that was explored in this Dream of Gender series was the dream of the solitary male monk practicing outside of community support. Do you recognize that dream? The second was the dream of feminine impurity threatening monastic purity. Legends, purity zones, and monastic rules enforced this dream. Dogen Zenji had some really scathing things to say about this dream. As Reverend Cutts told us, he wrote that if we see impurity in the feminine, we should know that the exact same impurity resides in the masculine. He also found this funny. The dream in China took on some additional new forms. The dream of humble nuns, pious lay followers, and pilgrims. This showed the effect of Confucianism and folk beliefs on Buddhist practice. Then there is the dream of koan heroes, male cohesion, and the occasional old woman in encounter tales. As Buddhism moved to Japan, there is the resulting sidelining of female shamans in Japan, alongside the vision of gender inclusiveness. In US Buddhism, we have a new dream, the dream of feminist egalitarianism enabling practice together. This is a dream, the dream of our time. We carry this entire history with us in our practice of Zen in the West, and we have added some trends of our own from Western dreams of gender, class, and racialized categories. In our time, right now, we have the fresh opportunity to explore this territory together, along with fresh openings to our co-practitioners in China and Japan. I am very fortunate to be in the position of standing on the border between Japan and the US. From my earliest days of practicing Zen in the monastery at Tassajara in California, I believed that making a connection with Japan was fundamental. It surprised me then that more people did not make the same assumption and make the effort to go to Japan. Only much later did I recognize how unusual my opportunity was. I was untethered by responsibilities, and I felt gratitude that my life had taken a shape that would allow me to leave the US, find a monastery in Japan, and stay as long as I liked. Also, the experience in Japan inoculated me against many of the strange beliefs I have heard over the years about what practice in Japan is like in a typical Soto Zen monastery. It's a lot more fun. That means that thousands and thousands of as several speakers in our series have pointed out, the practice of Zen in the West tilts. Pam Weiss's perfect word for this phenomenon. Practice here tilts toward monasticism. It therefore tilts away from family practice. Yet in Japan, most practice is family-oriented practice. Here is a useful statistic. There are about 16,000 Soto Zen temples in Japan. Of those, fewer than 40 are monasteries. That means that thousands and thousands of temples in Japan are family temples that serve the congregation of families, children, laymen, laywomen, everyone, providing ceremonies, gatherings, and various activities for each region and temple. Country temples have rice planting festivals. More urban temples celebrate other seasonal activities like the New Year and solstice activities, Children's Day, flower celebrations. I point this out because we can learn from our friends in Japan and Hawaii who practice in a very friendly and open way. Meanwhile, our Western style is very intriguing to many Japanese Soto Zen priests and members. The fact that everyone here in the US is welcome to sit in Zazen, and that the definition of practice in the West includes more than just Zazen is intriguing. Many temples in Japan and Hawaii would like to have more of the meditative practice that we offer. They would like to welcome a more diverse assembly of practitioners. In my own life, I went to Japan in September 1991. I had been ordained as a novice in January 1991. Soon I will reach 34 years as a priest. I chose to train at Hoshinji in Japan at the recommendation of Mayazumi Roshi. It was a wonderful, extremely difficult, life-changing experience. The different cultural attitudes about women were evident, but the various hardships were turned into compost for my practice, and I came through it profoundly enriched. I personally loved the physicality of the practice, but I found I was a failure at some of the interpersonal challenges at the beginning. And I gradually learned over time that I had brought a Western woman's mind to Japan, and it did not always meet the situation appropriately. Here's an important story for me. In the monastery, which was an official training monastery for men, there were 35 or 40 male practitioners, some lay practitioners. There were 3 women at the beginning, and then only 2 when my roommate had to go back to Germany for some reason. The only 2 remaining women were myself and a Japanese priest of long standing, about 15 or 20 years older than I, who served as the Roshi's jisha, or formal attendant, a high position in any monastery. She was a very accomplished priest. Her name was Tenshin-san. With my Western mind, I saw gender. Since we were the only 2 women, I naturally, air quotes naturally, acted toward her as a potential friend. But she would have nothing to do with me. I had figured out how to behave toward the men, letting the senior monks go first, doing my work diligently and sticking together in work groups, trying out my bad Japanese. But Tenshin-san would not have anything to do with me except formal bows. I pondered this. Suddenly, after some time, I had an insight. Japan is a formal culture that is based in respect for each other. Teachers are highly respected, and this respect is demonstrated in many small acts. It was like a light bulb went off. I realized I was treating Tenshin-san like an equal, the way women in the US do. We are trained often to be just equal, no matter the qualifications of the person. So when I realized that Tenshin-san was a teacher and I should behave appropriately, I started treating Tenshin-san the way I treated Docho Roshi the abbot. I would bow and use formal language, and I made it heartfelt, not like I was being ironic in any way. I opened my heart to the incredible respect I had for this senior practitioner who was practicing in a difficult environment, subject to much discrimination as a woman. The story ends well. She soon recognized that I understood my place. She saw that I was capable of showing her the appropriate respect, and she began to look out for me and help me generously. She gave me a wonderful present when I left that I still frequently use, and I always think of her when I use it, 34 years later. I have heard that she is the head of her own temple now, and I would like to visit her in Japan someday, now that my understanding of the difficulties for women in Japan has grown. In addition, and closer to our topic for this year, the issue of Japanese women practitioners is very topical right now. It is clear to everyone that one of the hallmarks of Soto Zen in the US is the predominance of women leaders of Zen centers, and the change in style of teaching that has occasioned, whether the women teachers recognize it or not. Things have changed in the US, and this is very useful for the world. Yet the number of women in leadership roles in Japan has declined precipitously. I hope we can find a way to reach out to our sisters in Japan and encourage them, and to be open as well to what they have to teach us. Western Buddhism is not necessarily the ultimate practice. Our self-centeredness shines brightly still. Another story I would like to share is what it was like to move to Houston 22 years ago. I was living in Tassajara Zen Mountain Center in the mountains of California when I first started visiting the Houston Zen community. I thought of it as a very enjoyable adventure, kind of a lark. I would come for a few days, give a talk or two, or teach a class on dependent co-arising, help people sew rakusus to receive the precepts from my teacher, Tenshin Anderson Roshi, and visit the wonderful art museums. It is a warm and friendly art-filled city. I'll say to those of you, I was determined not to be puzzled by the highways. So I would go back to where I was staying, pre-internet, and I had this giant map of Houston, and I would study that map so that I could find my way around. People would lend me a car, and I had to get from North Houston. Oh, really super fun. After a few years, when the group had grown accustomed to me, the members here started asking me to move to Houston. They needed and wanted someone who could help them deepen their practice and understanding. As collegial and earnest as they were, they needed a referee for some of their discussions. I'm not kidding, a referee. And they wanted someone who was as curious as they were and are about the teachings. So after establishing some agreements, I moved here. I have learned so much, and I've had my eyes opened about urban practice. At first, I assumed that everyone here would eagerly embrace a more monastic practice. Many long sittings, many sessions, and I wondered as I prepared to move here, should we have a 5-day session every month? Or perhaps every other month? Should we have a 1-day sitting every weekend or just every other weekend? I was such an idiot. Over the years, the light bulbs keep going off. I have listened to what is important in Houston for the lives and practice of sincere Zen students who are also working in the world and raising families or engaged in relationships. It has been a wonderful synergy of my experience, the experiences of all the founding members, and all the newly arrived members and seekers, all within the world of the Houston Zen community. We are much more like a family temple in Japan. We aren't trying to be a monastery. There are plenty of monasteries where members from here can train, both in the US and in Japan. Instead, we practice the heart of Zen in our ceremonies, classes, outreach efforts, and gatherings of all types. This is a perfect time for more communication among our centers. What I hope for is that through this series, we will build ever more connections, and we can continue to row this vibrant Soto Zen practice boat for the benefit of more and more people. Our world needs us more now than ever. Our willingness to see clearly and our willingness to act morally and compassionately is of profound importance. We've enjoyed a vast array of teaching from the women teachers over this past year. It has really been fantastic. This will be a great resource for all of us going forward. As you know, they're all recorded. I've watched all of them. And now, from Houston, we invite all of you on Zoom to join in the full moon bodhisattva ceremony. And the pearl that began this series has circled around to arrive on the altar in our temple. It will hold a central place in our ceremony. But first, I think there is a little time for questions, if Zena says that is so.
Konjin Roshi, thank you so much. Thank you for imparting wisdom and telling us your stories of experience. It was just very enlightening and also very engaging as well. So I learned a lot. Yeah, we do have time for question and answer. Okay, and so we do have a question. And the question is, Konjin Roshi, how can we express and realize our dreams for the future of Zen in the U.S. in a skillful way?
All of our action, including our dreams and plans and efforts, are done in the context of Sangha. We realize them by working together. And in fact, that's the way we clarify our dreams. So we can bring our dreams up. We have dream workshops here at Houston Zen Center, don't we? We have dream classes. We're big on dreams at Houston Zen Center. So having a dream is a very powerful, beneficial, auspicious occurrence. So let's work together to realize our dreams. We don't do things alone. We don't default to that feeling that we have to do it all by ourselves. My dream and my path. No, it's our dream and our path. So again, I think every question that anybody asks me, it's going to have something to do with Sangha, because that's the strength of Soto Zen Buddhism, and that's the strength of all of our centers.
Thank you so much for that. Dreams, visioning, as you can see, the celebrating the voices of women, that's just all kind of part of it. So thank you so much for aligning us with that. I want to check with the Houston Zen Center, since we do have in-person attendees. I do apologize for not acknowledging y'all over there. And just keep in mind that this is being recorded. It will be available for public viewing in YouTube. And did we have any questions on site in Houston?
They're sitting in silent meditation.
Well, we have a question here online. Okay, so I'll transition to that. And Konjin Roshi, can you share any more reflections and meetings on, any more reflections on meetings with Aoyama Roshi?
Can I share? Yeah, can I share more reflections on those meetings with Aoyama Roshi?
That is correct.
Yes, it was such a privilege to meet with her. She is the highest ranking Buddhist teacher who happens to be a female in Japan. She's higher ranking than most men. She's just a very high ranking practitioner. And when you are privileged to meet with really seasoned Zen masters, as she is, they're all different. They're all unique. They have different emphases in their lives. Some are more scholarly. Some are more devotional. Some really like to work around their temples. They're different and unique. She combines all of those. She's very scholarly. She's written a number of books. When I visited her at her monastery, she's the only head of a woman's monastery in Japan, and she's also the second top position at Sojiji Monastery. She's written a lot of books, and so after the visit, she gave me a copy of each of her books, which made my luggage about 40 pounds heavier. So I've got to learn some Japanese. She's very interested in flower arranging. She's very interested in calligraphy. She's a great artist. And yet, like a lot of Zen masters, she's very soft and easy to talk to. And then you'll see the steel come out. So I saw her behave towards some of her, the members of her monastery, correcting some of their behavior and the way they were dressed and so on. And it was quite firm. But she herself, very witty person. So the way I felt while meeting with her was that I was meeting with somebody who had, her eyes were so intelligent. So I felt like, even though we had to have translators. I spoke in English and then it was translated. She spoke in Japanese. We both understood about half of what each other said, but we really communicated through our eyes. It was lovely. It was really an amazing experience. I really liked her. I told her, she disagreed with a bunch of things I said. For instance, I said, the interviewer asked us what I thought would be a good way to solve this problem of the discrimination against women in Japan and Soto Zen temples. I said, well, in the US, we've solved that because men and women practice together. So men get used to having women in positions of leadership and women get used to being leaders and so on. It just all works out. And she said, oh, that'll never work. She said, there will be problems. And I said, there will be problems. And that's when you work to solve them. So she disagreed with me about that. And there was another thing she disagreed about. Well, it just slipped out of my mind. Oh, no, this was not one. She didn't disagree with this, but I told her about our practice. And several of the women in this series have mentioned the introduction of the names of the women ancestors. And we chant that too. During Sesshin, we alternate. One day we'll chant the male ancestors. One day we'll chant the women ancestors. And so we've got a list. Several people have mentioned it. It took a lot of work to make that list. And it's a beautiful thing. And I told her about that. And she listened. As a lot of women are, women tend to hold the tradition, which means that sometimes women are the ones who won't change the tradition occasionally. And so she really likes the ancestor lineage that's always been chanted in her experience. But I told her about it, and she immediately said, she immediately referred to Raihai Tokusui. And she knows the stories of the women who are on that list and asked if they were included. And I said, yes, they are. So what I felt very encouraged after meeting with her and more determined than ever to do what I can and what we can to benefit women, the practice of women in Japan. Every Japanese Soto Zen nun I've ever met is really impressive because there's something, as you know, when you have to practice with hardship, you develop a lot of flexibility. So all the women who've survived in Japanese Soto Zen have a strength that's really, really beautiful. And we just want to make it possible for all women to enter the practice in Japan and in the US.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'll just never forget my meetings with Aoyama Roshi.
Thank you for that. And the questions are coming in on the online portion or with the audience here. I just want to check in with Houston Zen Center, going once, going twice.
Oh, they get to talk to me all the time. It's really
All right.
I mean, I get to talk to them all the time.
Well, the next question is, does Konjin Roshi believe that women need to train differently than men, or does she train everyone the same way?
Oh, that's a super interesting question. That's a really interesting question. I think what I really like about Zen practice is that everybody trains uniquely. And I think that perhaps the influence, the kind of unrecognized, unconscious influence of women teachers is that we adapt to treating people differently. I don't think women as a whole, as a category, need to train differently from men as a whole, as a different category. But within those categories, people benefit from different training events, different training styles. It's beautiful. So I think one of the earlier talks in this series, one of the speakers talked about the trauma body and bringing the trauma body to practice and how you work with that. So we're sensitive to people with trauma coming to our Zen Center and the different ways that practice should be adapted, lots of movement oriented. We've already adapted our practice so that the Zazen periods are usually about 30 minutes rather than 40 or 50 minutes long. I think that's partly a response to the urban reality of practice. And so, no, I don't think that I think about training women differently from training men. I hardly ever use the word training. Do I use the word training very much? Practice. We use the word practice. Yeah. So I think about practicing with women the same way I think about practicing with men, wholehearted meeting. That sounded good.
Again, thank you, Konjin Roshi. And the next question is, what do you see as the strength of female Zen teachers and their voices, and what might be the pitfalls or weaknesses? And I can repeat that if you need me to.
No, I've got it. Yeah. My mind just immediately started scanning the faces of the women teachers I know. And many have been on the series that I know personally: Chosen Bays, Linda Ruth Cutts, Joan Halifax Roshi, Chimio Atkinson. Oh, so many. All of them are uniquely who they are. What do they have in common? They are devoted to practicing the way. They are devoted to Soto Zen practice. And then around that inner core of devotion, there's so much creativity and flexibility. I think one of the challenges for us in the West is that we tend to be very creative, and then what we need to honor is the tradition. So I feel very privileged. I get to travel around. I've visited hundreds of Zen centers around this country and in Japan, and I get to witness some of the results of some of the creative changes that people have made. And some of those changes, I think, yeah, this is really good. Some I think, we'll see about that. And some I think, well, that's a loss, that particular piece of Soto Zen has been put aside. So I think the really important thing for us in our country is to find ways to come together and study what each other is doing and not be isolated. It's a problem. Our country is so huge. But to go around and experience what different people are experimenting with or trying to creatively adapt and so on. I'm so proud of what we do here in Houston with our family temple, but with this very traditional core of Zazen practice and being mindful of how we move inside the temple, and doing oryoki, which some centers have dropped. So women teachers have been forced to experiment and have taken up the challenge and are doing a really great job. Are there any weaknesses that I see to women teachers? One time, not really, but one time I was at Tassajara, and it just so happened that in the Rokuchiji, which is the 6 senior leaders of a monastery, we know a lot of them, the Tenzo, the director, the treasurer, the work leader, the guest manager, and the director. Did I say director twice? Anyway, there's 6 leaders. And it just so happened that all of them were women. It just happened, you know. For probably a decade before that, they'd all been men, and then women started to have those positions, and suddenly they were all women. And one of the male students complained because he didn't feel represented in the leadership. So you could say that women leaders, it's not so conscious, but we are, by standing up, we are in a vulnerable position. So not inherently weak, but it's vulnerable. Taking a vulnerable position to stand up and declare your truth. Don't you think so, people? Anybody who does that is vulnerable. Otherwise, I don't see any weaknesses of having a whole bunch of women teachers. As Aoyama, Blue Mountain, that's her name, Blue Mountain, Aoyama Roshi would say, I don't see gender.
Thank you so much for that. And we do have another question here online. And so are there any thoughts about how to strengthen the sense of community in sanghas?
Yes, we experiment all the time here. So strengthening say it again, the sense of community, or
That is correct. The sense of community.
Strengthening the sense of community. It goes against, the sense of community goes against our Western trained bias, that we are isolated, we have to figure this all out all on our own and so on. There are really great books about it, about how we're raised to be that way in this culture, and how Japanese children are not raised to be that way. From the time they can toddle, there are various things that mothers do to help their children learn empathy. It's not an innate skill, but it can be trained at a very early age, or it can be encouraged and allowed. And we're taught more, generally speaking, to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and express your own individual truth, stand up for yourself, and so on. So that goes against a natural community instinct. And I can't tell you how many people at our Zen Center have told me that they like a few of the people here, but basically they don't like to join groups. So they just want me to know that they don't like joining groups. And I say, welcome to this group. Everybody here says that same thing. So I think being open about the challenge of community, and keep going against the tendency to want to be by yourself and go off and do things by yourself. We have to really go against something, and it's uncomfortable. One of the things that helps me personally is that I like to do sports. I like to do running, less now than I did when I was younger, but I'm used to the feeling of discomfort, discomfort. If you want to develop a running practice, there are a lot of times when you don't want to do it and it's miserable, but you do it and afterwards you feel good. So gradually to learn that. So I think we have to tell all of our sanghas, I don't say it so much, but maybe I'll start saying this. It feels terrible to come here, but you'll feel great afterwards. It's, people are going against something to come and merge with a group and not get your own way and not necessarily have the schedule go your way, but you feel so much more enriched after being part of a group. Isn't that true, my group?
Yes.
Half and half. Half people are nodding, half are not. So to acknowledge difference in the Sangha, accept all sorts of suggestions about how to build community and try it out and keep going. There were some things that we now do that I didn't think would be that much fun. But now it's like, I'm so glad we do that thing. And right now I can't remember what it is because it's all been merged into our practice. And act like a family temple. We're not just all meant to sit down and do a 7-day sesshin together. We're meant to enjoy each other's presence. As you know, one of the fun things about doing a sesshin is the party afterwards, or at least the gathering. We don't have wild parties, but the conviviality that happens after you've done this thing together. What else? Do you guys have suggestions for how to build community? We have such a strong community here. What do we do that's good? Debbie.
The classes are beautiful. We
Oh.
have some wonderful deep conversation, whether it's dream, poetry, or one of the sutras.
Yeah. I sort of tell people about this whenever I go to SZBA or AZTA meetings. We have a lot of classes. We have classes, and they're taught by senior members, and they're organized by senior members so that many people will teach the class. And the discussion, as Debbie just said, the discussions create intimacy. You get to know each other. So 2 nights a week, there's a class on something or other, the dream of gender or basic Buddhist teachings. Yeah, it's a very important vehicle for practice for our group. And also it's a really nice gateway for people who otherwise would feel a little intimidated coming to a Zen center. They're not going to the Zen center, they're going to take a class on Buddhism. And then they become a member, and then yeah, that's a good, the classes have been a brilliant offering that we have. What else? Gail.
I would say that it's such a value, as you said, Gaelyn, Sangha, so that we are encouraged and structured to interact all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Suggestions to please speak to the newcomers, please engage in these sorts of ways with each other. And when people discover the opportunity for kindness and acceptance with each other, that just grows.
Did you hear her, Zena? Yeah, we're fearless.
To hear her.
Yeah, we're fearless about that. We'll say, Zena, have you met Keegan? Would you walk across the room with me now and have a conversation with her? And oh, Ben, hi Ben. Have you met? Let's see, can't see the rest of Kodo. Would you walk across and here? Let me introduce you to Kodo. Now you two guys start talking, and I'll leave and see you later. So we're fearless. It's a little, maybe it's the privilege of being in the South, where people are used to being in churches a little bit and expected to talk. We haven't gone so far that we make people wear name tags. But we do like to break that barrier. And of course, 92% of us are introverts, so it really is a barrier. We have some extroverts. It's a sad life for them, though. Yeah, I hope that answers it, because for me, again, the community, the Sangha, the fact that we practice together as a group is so nourishing and so important in this world. We're facing some big challenges going ahead. And so we really need to help each other and talk to each other about serious issues all the time. Now I'm getting about half nods. You see, I pay attention to what my Sangha communicates. Nodding.
Coach and Roshi, thank you so much for that. And I really appreciate the statistic for introverts, the number of that, because I consider myself an introvert as well. And I would just like to say that one of the things I appreciate, the thing that we do, and as far as the World Sangha so far with, what the SZBA offerings is concerned, is the Zoom. All of the Zoom events, all the Zoom meetings that I see that a number of Sanghas are engaged in. I just think that helps out us introverts and,
Yeah.
And it increases accessibility as well. So I just wanted to just back off of that and just say thank you so much for offering that. So thank you.
You're welcome. There is one other piece of information about that I want to give you, Zena, because it really helped me when I learned this a long time ago. According to the Jungian psychological model, people who are introverts and extroverts gradually over the course of a lifetime change sides a little bit, and you become more balanced, and you even become the other one. And so at my age, I gradually actually have crossed over, and I'm more of an extrovert, which is really fun because I understand introverts so well, so I can pry my way into introvert territory. So you too will gradually move over into the extrovert territory, and it'll be a big gift to the world, although what you're doing now is such a huge gift. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we are hitting the mark where we can now begin preparation for the ceremony. If we don't have any more questions online, I don't see any more questions from the online chat here. So if the Houston Zen Center, and I'm just checking the agenda here, just making sure I'm on track. Yes. If you all are ready to begin the full moon ceremony, we will stand by. And feel free to turn off your cameras if it helps you to get set up as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. So we will transition to that, and it will take us not very long.
4 to 5 minutes.
Just 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Beautiful pearl, everyone. You can see that. It's been residing on our altar for the past few weeks. Welcome to the full moon Bodhisattva ceremony. We're all going to vow our precepts together.
Everyone goes into kneeling position. All my ancient twisted karma, all my ancient
twisted karma.
From beginningless greed, hate, and delusion.
From beginningless greed, hate, and delusion.
Born through body, speech, and mind.
Born through body, speech, and mind.
I now fully avow.
I now fully avow
All my ancient twisted karma.
all my ancient twisted karma.
From beginningless greed, hate, and delusion.
From beginningless greed, hate, and delusion.
Born through body, speech, and mind.
Born through body, speech, and mind.
I now fully avow.
I now fully avow
All my ancient twisted karma.
all my ancient twisted karma.
From beginningless greed, hate, and delusion.
From beginningless greed, hate, and delusion.
Born through body, speech, and mind.
Born through body, speech, and mind.
I now fully avow.
I now fully avow
Homage to the 7 Buddhas before Buddha.
homage to the 7 Buddhas before Buddha.
Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha.
Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha.
Homage to Maitreya Buddha.
Homage to Maitreya Buddha.
Homage to Manjushri Bodhisattva.
Homage to Sri Bodhisattva.
Homage to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva.
Homage to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva.
Homage to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva.
Homage to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva.
Homage to the succession of ancestors.
Homage to the succession of ancestors.
Homage to the 7 Buddhas before Buddha.
Homage to the 7 Buddhas before Buddha.
Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha.
Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha.
Homage to Maitreya Buddha.
Homage to Maitreya Buddha.
Homage to Manjushri Bodhisattva.
Homage to Manjushri Bodhisattva.
Homage to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva.
Homage to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva.
Homage to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva.
Homage to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva.
Homage to the succession of ancestors.
Homage to the succession of ancestors.
Homage to the 7 Buddhas before Buddha.
Homage to the 7 Buddhas before Buddha.
Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha.
Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha.
Homage to Maitreya Buddha.
Homage to Maitreya Buddha.
Homage to Manjushri Bodhisattva.
Homage to Manjushri Bodhisattva.
Homage to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva.
Homage to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva.
Homage to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva.
Homage to Iteshvaram Bodhisattva.
Homage to the succession of ancestors.
Homage to the succession of ancestors.
Beings are numberless, I vow to save them.
Beings are numberless, I vow to save them.
Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them.
Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them.
Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them.
Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them.
Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.
Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.
Beings are numberless, I vow to save them.
Beings are numberless, I vow to save them.
Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them.
Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them.
Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them.
Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them.
Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.
Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.
Beings are numberless, I vow to save them.
Beings are numberless, I vow to save them.
Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them.
Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them.
Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them.
Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them.
Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.
Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.
I take refuge in Buddha. and
Before all beings, entering deeply the merciful ocean of Buddha's way,
I take refuge in
before all beings, bringing harmony to everyone, free from hindrance.
I vow to embrace and sustain what is conducive to liberation.
I vow to embrace and sustain what is conducive to liberation.
It is the abode of the law of all Buddhas. It is the source of the law of all Buddhas. I vow to embrace and sustain all good.
I vow to embrace and sustain all good.
It is the teaching of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi and the path of the one who practices and that which is practiced. I vow to embrace and sustain all beings.
I vow to embrace and sustain all beings.
It is transcending profane and holy and taking self and others across. I vow not to kill.
I vow not to kill.
By not killing life, the Buddha tree seed grows. Transmit the life of Buddha and do not kill. I vow not to take what is not given.
I vow not to take what is not given.
The self and objects are such as they are, two yet one. The gate of liberation stands open. I vow not to misuse sexuality.
I vow not to misuse sexuality.
Let the three wheels of self, object, and action be pure. With nothing to desire, one goes along together with the Buddhas. I vow to refrain from false speech.
I vow to refrain from false speech.
The Dharma wheel turns from the beginning. There is neither surplus nor lack. The sweet dew saturates all and harvests the truth. I vow to refrain from intoxicating mind or body of self or other.
I vow to refrain from intoxicating mind or body of self or others.
Originally pure, don't defile. This is the great awareness. I vow not to slander.
I vow not to slander.
in the Buddha Dharma, go together, appreciate together, realize together, and actualize together. Don't permit fault finding. Don't permit haphazard talk. Do not corrupt the way. I vow not to praise self at the expense of others.
I vow not to praise self at the expense of others.
Buddhas and ancestors realize the vast sky and the great earth. When they manifest the noble body, there is neither inside nor outside in emptiness. When they manifest the Dharma body, there is not even a bit of earth on the ground. I vow not to be avaricious.
I vow not to be avaricious.
One phrase, one verse, that is the 10,000 things and 100 grasses. One Dharma, one realization is all Buddhas and ancestors. Therefore, from the beginning, there has been no stinginess at all. I vow not to harbor ill will.
I vow not to harbor ill will.
Not negative, not positive, neither real nor unreal. There is an ocean of illuminated clouds and an ocean of bright clouds. I vow not to abuse the three treasures of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha.
I vow not to abuse the three treasures of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha.
To expound the Dharma with this body is foremost. The virtue returns to the ocean of reality. It is unfathomable. We just accept it with respect and gratitude. Thus, on this full moon day, we dedicate the merit of the Bodhisattva way through all world systems to the boundless nature of all beings.
All Buddha's 10 directions 3 times. All honored ones, Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas. Wisdom beyond wisdom.
Toward our friends. So I'll try to get in the picture. Have some words from Zena, I believe, closing words.
Well, thank you, Konjin Roshi. And like my favorite Tetson, Matthew McConaughey would say, all right, all right, all right. Again, thank you, Konjin Roshi. Reverend Kosan, Reverend Shojin, all the ceremony participants and organizers at the Houston Zen Center, and everyone that I may have overlooked, I apologize for that. And the DEIA Committee of the Soto Zen Buddhist Association. And thank you very much to everyone attending today's event online and at the Houston Zen Center. Before we end the event, please take a moment to look at the information in the chat. Please consider completing the feedback form for the Celebrating the Voices of Women series. We will use your feedback to improve the SZBA events for next year. Also, to review the past recordings from the past year, you can go to the link there and it will say schedule at the top. But if you go to each event, you will see the past recordings for each event there. And I just want to announce, we're excited, stay tuned for the 2025 lineup for the SZBA events that are focused on actualizing and sustaining healthy Zen communities. These events will explore ways to foster healthy communication within sanghas and deepen meaningful engagement with their local communities. Again, see you next year. Thank you everyone for attending. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, so great. Nan-san, see you soon.